views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight we have another one of our Bronx neighborhood shows. As you know, over the years we've specialized in going from neighbor to neighbor around the Bronx to see what and how everyone is doing. Tonight is particularly significant because it features a group who has banded together to see what they can do in order to make their neighborhood better. It's the Women of Woodlawn, folks. And we'll find out why they got together, about issues in Woodlawn that just might be similar to what's going on in your community. And we'll also get a chance to understand even better how to forge positive change in the Bronx. Housing, education, economic development, parks, and more on our table tonight. We also invite you to ask questions or make comments. You can call in at 718-960-7261, which is a new number for us. You can also post comments on our Facebook page or send them in an email to bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. For the here and now, welcome to the Women of Woodlawn. It is President Erin Lee. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And Vice President Kim Holliker-Ferletti. Kim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Madam President, why don't you explain to me who the Women of Woodlawn are and why you exist?
We are a civic organization that started in the Woodlawn community to meet what we felt like were unmet needs in the community. We felt like there were some disparities between other neighborhoods in the New York City, and we felt like we deserved a little bit of attention, and we thought we were willing to fight for the things that we wanted to see improvements in, largely our schools, our parks, our city services. And we felt like we had the ambition and the drive to tackle those obstacles.
Obviously, you're both women, and as I understand, the whole group is women. I mean, explain that to me, and let's say I or somebody else wanted to join. The idea is really specifically women, or, you know, you just defined it that way because you're friends? I mean, explain how that came about.
Well, the group came about as a group of friends, neighbors, talking and wanting to really address these concerns in the neighborhood, and we wanted it to be an environment that was really friendly towards women. Oftentimes women aren't allowed to share their experience, their professional experience, or their skills in leadership in a way that they would like. And this group gives them the opportunity to really grow and nurture those skills. So we got together, and we have a very diverse group of women that represent all areas of our community. And it's really an opportunity for women to come together and feel comfortable working as a team.
Kim, you know, the agenda, and I laid out a little bit of it, and you heard it also from Erin just a moment ago. How difficult are these issues? Are you getting an education about how things work through this process? And we should mention
absolutely.
they've been in together since March, so we're coming around to a full year. Explain to me just what the experience has been like.
So, it's one thing to have ideas, and it's really a different thing to put those ideas into action. And, our ideas have all been spurred from personal experiences in trying to better our neighborhood and improve things. A lot of us are mothers, and pre-K was a really big launching point for us to try to gain attention and get universal pre-K in our neighborhood. We really had no idea how much how much work it would be.
How much resistance there is,
How
and
much
there's something so logical. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's definitely a nice way to put it. What do they say? No good deed goes unpunished.
I guess so.
The things that people have gotten upset about are kind of strange sometimes to us, but we really we continue to be positive, we continue to move forward, and we are learning so much about the way politics work, about the way the DOE works, about just about every regulation you can imagine. We're really getting an education on city functions.
You know, when I heard Erin talking about, why you got together and said, well, as a group of friends, we wanted to change things, I'm willing to bet that many of the people watching us in their neighborhoods, they have the same conversations, and they sit with their neighbors and say, look at what's going on my block, and next week we're doing a show on people who want to convert a church to a community center. I mean, these are all very familiar things in just about every Bronx neighborhood. Characterize Woodlawn for me. What do you see there, and what is the neighborhood like? We can show some pictures of just a couple of shots of the neighborhood as well. What do you see there that would make you say, gee, we're not getting, we want to get some more?
So Woodlawn is a very working class neighborhood, primarily Irish. We do have a large immigrant population.
I think we do have some pictures of the business district and those things that I do want to show. Go ahead.
And we have we're bordered by the Woodlawn Cemetery, the Bronx River, and Van Cortlandt Park. And there's a couple areas where we feel that we've been overlooked. One is our school is highly overcrowded. We have a K-8 public school, PS19, that has over 500 students, and the building capacity is at 349. And there's been talk in the 11 years that I've been a parent at that school of some sort of expansion or some sort of solution to deal with those overcrowding issues, but there's never really been a solution that has gone past talking stages.
And that's one of the kinds of things that you and your colleagues want to push forward.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more specifically about that. Erin, let me just ask you a little bit about what I know about Woodlawn, just as somebody who's traveled around and through the Bronx, whether it be on my bicycle or taking a ride or whatever. Katona Avenue seems lovely. It seems like nice shops. How healthy is the business district, and do the people in the area benefit from that business district, and is there kind of a symbiotic relationship? As the business district goes, so goes the community?
I think the business district is another area that we would really like to see some improvements. I think we have a large number of empty storefronts. I think there are 6 or 7 at present count, which is significant in maybe 4 blocks. I think you have a variety of stores that appeal to the entire community. You have a central grocery store, which we finally got back after extensive battles to bring a real grocery store back to a quite isolated community. As Kim said, being geographically isolated, we really rely on those local businesses to be able to provide at least the basics. So they're crucial for the people who live in our community. We have a fantastic butcher, great bakeries, wonderful bars and restaurants. So
I was going to say, I know the bakeries and I know some of the bars and restaurants.
Yeah, so we have
really great local pharmacy. Then they will go above and beyond. They know you by name.
That's what we call a neighborhood.
It is a neighborhood, and there is a main street where everybody kind of knows everybody.
So we'll have you both weigh in on it, and you started to weigh in on it before. Why is it so difficult? What are the factors that make it so difficult to say, well, wait a minute, now here's an empty storefront, it's a reasonably nice looking district, why can't we just get businesses in there and put something in there that will just amplify, all the nice things in the community?
Well, I think as a group we've talked about our wish list, the things that we would like to see added to our community. I think One of the biggest problems is because we are so isolated geographically, people largely have to drive to Woodlawn. It's in the Bronx, but it's on the border of Yonkers, and it's far enough outside of the city that you really can't rely on public transportation to get there, and parking is virtually non-existent. So
welcome to the Bronx, folks.
You can't come to our main street and really do your shopping without struggling to find a place to
Which, of
park
course,
your car.
discourages people from wanting to do
Absolutely.
parking. Let's get into this school issue, which Kim brought up. So PS19 is overcrowded. The thing that I learned in doing the research for this show was this whole thing over UPK. Now, the city boasted about the 50,000 extra UPK seats. They were highly successful. I know that there was some, back and forth about some of the particulars, but overall, at least the word is that it's been very successful. You folks have been telling me there is no UPK in Woodlawn. I found it hard to believe. I still find it hard to believe.
That is absolutely correct. There are no UPK seats in our neighborhood, either provided through the DOE or community-based organizations. And the initiative on the mayor's part was so big that they even hung this giant banner in our Woodlawn playground along Van Cortlandt Park. This is sign up now. And I have a child who's in pre-K through a paid program because I couldn't get into any programs in my neighborhood.
And as I understand, they even called you.
They called me repeatedly.
And you said, but I would love to, but I can't.
Exactly.
And what was the dialogue like to try and what is the dialogue like to put UPK seats in there?
Well, there wouldn't be a dialogue, I think, unless we were trying to push something to happen. We are in conversation with one of the local schools that is run through the Catholic Church in our neighborhood to see the viability of bringing a community-based...
Of using their space.
Yeah, to go the community-based organization route to provide seats, but that's our only option at this point.
Erin, just to give away a little personal information, you said you had a youngster of that age, and for next year you're going to have to figure that out. Could this actually happen in time for that? I guess if they started 50,000 seats, they can get you guys a couple of hundred.
I guess I would consider myself cautiously optimistic. I'm hopeful that by September they will have a program up and running in Woodlawn. As Kim said, this church school is the most promising lead. We have been exploring other options. We've been working with a developer of an apartment complex to see whether he would be willing to convert that apartment building into a community center and universal pre-K space with another community partner, but it's all still in the works.
I probably should have asked you this in the beginning, and the next thing I want to do, and I want to get our folks in the control room ready, because we have that dual picture of a piece of property that I think is going to resonate with a lot of people in the Bronx, because this is the kind of thing that's going on all over the Bronx. But I should have asked, how many women are involved in Women of Woodlawn, and do you meet every day, every week, every month? How does that work?
We meet monthly, and our general meetings are monthly, and then we have additional meetings for some of the subcommittees. We've been working a lot on grants, trying to basically fund the projects that we want to do within the neighborhood.
And there was one grant that there was a second one. They told me I'm not allowed to talk about it, but it's good news. They'll announce it on their own. Nonetheless, there was one grant that did come through, the Love Your Block grant.
Yes.
Right? What is that? You want to say what that is?
So that's a micro grant of $1,000 provided through Citizens
Committee of New York.
I got it right here.
And it is $1,000 plus city services through DOT, sanitation, and the Parks Department to beautify one city block.
And listen, $1,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but I guess for a young organization, you must have been thrilled.
Well, I think the big thing that we're excited about is the city services that go along with that. They really support you in free ways by cleaning up the trash, They remove graffiti. You can apply to have speed bumps put on that block. So there's a lot of infrastructure that goes along with that grant.
So again, even though, again, you talk about how much money could be out there, but that's a good start. For
That's
you,
a great
that was
start.
A really good
We're
start.
very excited about it.
Yeah. Okay, now I want to put this on the screen, and I don't know who wants to tell me this story, which I've heard about what are we looking at here on the left and then on the right? Okay, who's going to tell me?
I'll tell
ahead.
you.
All right, go ahead.
So on the left is a house that I would say is pretty typical architecturally of what you find in Woodlawn. Charming, quaint, beautiful single-family home. That's a tax photo from the 80s. And then on the right is what you see now if you drove
In
down
that
that
same
block.
spot.
In the same exact spot.
Okay, what took us from that nice little house to that? Do we know what happened there?
We do.
They do. That's why I brought them on the show.
One of the problems in our neighborhood is that there are still residential single-family homes that are zoned R7A, which means that a developer can come and purchase that single-family home, demolish it, and build up to 7 stories of apartment buildings.
Now, that doesn't look like it's at 7 stories.
It is
yet.
not. That is
yet.
about 3.5 in that picture, and I
All
think...
right, so then let's pass it along to Kim. So this is, obviously nobody's living in there. What's the status of that? And why is it of concern, and why did Gary think this was an important thing to put on our program?
So the building was the house that was there was bought and demolished somewhere around 2006, 2007, where the developer of what you see there started building in
Somebody
the boom,
sold out, and then he sold it to a developer, and they started putting up.
and
the
they
house.
started putting that up. So somewhere in the boom of the market, this building starts to go up, and he runs out of money and abandons the property.
Okay. So just for folks who, and I know people in the Bronx understand this, so you've got a 2-family home, they've sold out to somebody who's going to build something larger, which brings in any number of issues.
Yeah.
Now it's complicated because the place is abandoned. What's the prospect for this particular property now?
So the plan for this particular property is a 7-story, 25 micro apartment building ranging from 400 to 600 square foot, very small one bedroom apartments.
Okay.
And the developer thinks that he can attract doctors from Montefiore Hospital and charge rents of
well beyond market rate.
Yeah, well beyond.
$1,500 is what I was told on the phone before this show.
Yeah. So that's
so now
not.
you've got 25 apartments at $1,500 a pop.
Yes.
Do you think that's realistic?
I don't think it's realistic at all.
You don't think doctors from Montefiore will want to stay there, in between shifts or whatever it is?
Well, they're not here now in our neighborhood, so I don't see a big shift in them
All right,
flooding to our neighborhood.
Who wants to define what the elephant in the room is? What is your concern about that property? Or I'll say it if you don't want.
Well,
we have several.
Guess how many parking spots they're providing for these 25
Okay,
units?
that's one.
0.
Okay, and the other concern would be that it's not going to turn out to be housing for those kinds of folks.
Well, and on top of that, say that it does turn into 1-bedroom apartments and they are rented. They're not going to get rented to only single people. They're going to be rented to families in part.
Because that's where the need is.
And that's where the need is.
Mm-hmm.
And those children will be flooding our already overcrowded school. Mm-hmm. So there's a lack of parking. There's a general lack of infrastructure to support this building.
What about the possibility, or is there the possibility that it would turn into supportive housing or something?
And that is another major concern.
I thought you were going to bring that up first, but so you don't know because you don't have control over the property. What is the dialogue like about that property? Is there dialogue? Can you have dialogue because it's private property?
We've been lucky enough to build a very strong relationship with the developer of that building, and we
Well, that's
are
good.
pursuing other options, as I said, of using the space as something other than apartment buildings, perhaps a community center that could also house universal pre-K, which would solve several community issues.
Yeah,
So,
we are on a tight time deadline though, because the developer he's waited a long time and he's looking to move forward, and he has a dollar amount in mind of what he wants to get, and the biggest prospect that we've just that we've talked to so far wouldn't be able to afford to rent the entire building. And the developer doesn't want a mixed-use building where part of it is used for a school or from some sort of commercial purpose and the rest of it is residential. So it's our goal now to try to fill that whole building with assets to the community.
This dialogue, and people all over the Bronx know about it. I mean, to me, and what is becoming clear to me, self-determination for Bronx communities is maybe the biggest issue that we have right now in the Bronx. And so, I've heard this from you. We're going to hear it next week, and what we're going to talk about with a church on 175th Street. The most hopeful thing I've heard out of you is the fact that you say that you have there's a dialogue going. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is, unless I've screwed it up now by having this discussion on TV, but that sounds hopeful that maybe there can be something worked out that would be mutually beneficial. Certainly you want a developer to do well.
It feels promising, and I think for us it's just a matter of doing that work to see whether we can find other organizations and programs that can fill the other floors to make this happen. And I think we feel like we've come so far at making this happen that we're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that we've tried everything we can.
By the way, one question which I realized you didn't answer for me was the number of women involved in Women of Woodlawn.
We have about 75 people on our
75.
mailing list, and we have about, I would say, 20 to 25 women that show up at each meeting. Yep. So it ranges. I would say we have a lot of working mothers, a lot of busy people. So we have a lot of people that show up when they're available, and they keep in tune with what we're doing via Facebook and the web and online.
I'm smiling because everybody's working, everybody's busy. This is one of the most difficult aspects of trying to put a group like this together.
Yeah.
Because, again, I know that people all over the Bronx are watching and saying, gee whiz, we'd like to do that, but we have the same issues. It's very difficult for working people to find the time to do these kinds of things. You've had some success, though, Kim, right? You did the parks cleanup. Tell me about some of the things you've done that make you feel like we're actually getting some. I mean, I've talked about all the difficult problems, but you've done some nice things, right?
Yeah, well, getting the Love Your Block grant was definitely a big win. It was our first grant, and one that we didn't need a fiscal sponsor for. We're a registered 501c4 civic organization as opposed to a 501c3 nonprofit. And but we do have a relationship with a local nonprofit who is a fiscal sponsor for us. And we helped them raise not raise, but to get goods together for some of their food drives around the holidays, and we got women to donate coats for coat drives for New York Cares. And we also have worked with Friends of Van Cortlandt Park to do some general park cleanups.
This is Van Cortlandt Park East, for people who don't know that part of the park. It's a lovely part of it, and there have been some nice playgrounds and some upgrades on those playgrounds. It's really a wonderful place, and obviously we need that. Before we run out of time, if you would, Erin, so we know we want the UPK. We want to address that problem, in that building, and try and turn that into something. There's overcrowding in the school that certainly needs coordination with the DOE. What else is in the future? Where do you see this whole organization going?
I think the sky's the limit. I think we have such a diverse group of women, and with that comes a diverse group of interests and needs and wants. And so I think really, we have a never-ending list of problems to tackle, and the wish list keeps growing. So.
And I will tell you that to me, this is the best of the Bronx. When people in their own communities, and we support this all the time in the show, take a hold of their communities, want to dedicate their time and their lives to doing something that empowers everybody around them and betters their community. So I congratulate you on getting started, and I look forward to seeing more from the women of Woodlawn. We can bring you back here when you're ready to talk about the next grant that you got and all the other nice things that will happen. It's pretty exciting. All right, you'll let me know about it. Anyway, Erin and Kim from Women of Woodlawn, thank you very much. Now it's womenofwoodlawn.org, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, womenofwoodlawn.org, and that's how people can get in touch with you. Also, they can look you up on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Now, folks on TV, if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then simply email them to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org or put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. Certainly, if you want to just send a nice note to say, hey, these guys are doing the right thing, that's okay, too. Please make sure you like Bronx Talk on Facebook, and you can check out our archives at BronxNet.org. You'll find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. Next week, as I've been alluding to throughout tonight's program, it's community advocates from the Grand Concourse who want to turn an abandoned church into a community center. It's the same story in every Bronx neighborhood right now, folks. Can we self-determinate in our community? That's the question. And we're going to try to address it as much as we can on Bronx Talk. Thanks to Dahlia, the producer, to Shirley, the director, to Helen and the cast of thousands around us. We'll see you next week.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. You can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit Fire